The physical food you eat is supposed to be a reminder of the spiritual food you need. So go back to Deuteronomy. I want you to see where Jesus is quoting. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 2 on down, it says this. Remember, Israel is now wandering in the wilderness. There's a parallel here. Jesus is in the wilderness for 40 days, and he's being tempted. Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years, and they're being tempted. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 8, beginning in verse 2, it says, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble you and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. So maybe you're here and you're going, it seems like I'm always in the desert. Seems like I'm always in the wilderness. How come God gives me all these promises, but they never seem to actually become a reality? There's some of you going, why can't I get into this, quote, promised land? Why do I keep living in this wilderness? And it's not you asking God the question, it's actually God asking you the question, why do you want to keep wandering in the wilderness and not move into the promise I have for you? Yeah, you're not sure if you should applaud. But that's okay. We're going to get there. It says, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble you. That's a tricky thing because there are two words that are almost connected and yet they're so separated. To be humble or to be humiliated. From the same etymology, but you choose to be humble, but you don't choose to be humiliated. And if you don't choose to be humble, you are choosing to be humiliated. It says he humbled you, causing you to hunger. Why would God ever make you hungry? And then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you, here it is, here's what Jesus said, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. He goes on to say, your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord disciplines you. What's God actually saying? Look, I left you in the wilderness for 40 years so you could learn this one principle, that my voice is life to you. My words are life to you. And I have done this so many ways, but you can't seem to quite get it. So I made you hungry, and you start saying, God, we're going to starve to death. And he says, so I gave you manna. I love this word manna. It's kind of a play on words in the Hebrew. The word manna rhymes with the word manhu, which means what is it? And so they wake up in the morning, there's this like wafery-like thing on the ground, and they've never seen it before. It says neither you nor your ancestors knew it. In fact, what he's saying is no one had ever seen this stuff before. You know, like quinoa or kale or like, where did that stuff come from? How come it didn't exist 3 years ago? You know what I'm talking about? Everything in the health food section, I'm going, where was that last year? Well, no, it's just good for you. Imagine waking up seeing this stuff, this wafer-like product on the ground, and you're going, what is it? What is it? And God's saying, just collect it. It's going to feed you. Now think about this. Every nutrient you need is in the manna. All the proteins, all the carbs, vitamin D, E, C, B, all of them. It's better than quinoa. It's better than kale. And in this one product, manna, what is it? You could eat it and you would be completely replenished and you would find your strength. By God giving you this manna, what is it? And God said, I put this manna out for you so you would learn that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The manna was God speaking and creating material so they could eat the voice, the words of God. It's like this beautiful image. And here's the crazy thing. That manna, it only lasted one day. But if you were hungry and you found manna and you realized it was pretty good, you'd store enough for maybe 2 days, right? Just in case God changed his mind about you. So you'd store it up. And guess what? It would rot after one day. And except on the Sabbath, it would last 2 days. Can you imagine if you bought something and had a different expiration date? Last 24 hours except over the Sabbath. Last 48 hours. No changes have been made. And so it would last for 2 days over the Sabbath, so they wouldn't have to work on the Sabbath. And then as soon as the Sabbath is over, it would only last 1 day. It would be so confusing. Because God was trying to teach them, give us this day our daily bread. See, God is trying to teach us how to live our lives where every single day we're fully dependent on Him for life. And He teaches there's a direct relationship between life and His voice and our ability to hear His voice and His word. If you want to hear His voice, meditate on His words. If you want to live, you have to hear His voice.